Iowa football's hit the transfer portal hard, but they need more. We break it down today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked on Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked on Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Iowa football has hit the transfer portal hard. We're going to talk about what is still out there and what Iowa definitely needs. We will get into that here today. We're going to talk Iowa basketball as the Hawkeyes get ready to face off against USC on the hardwood tonight. The LA road trip, we knew it was in front of this team and certainly feels a whole lot different with the Fires in LA, what is happening, and we await what's going to happen with the matchup on Friday night against UCLA. Two games that could be difficult. You saw USC over the weekend look really good against Illinois with the road victory. We've seen UCLA before the last couple of weeks look really good. A talented team, and Mick Cronin, their coach, struggling with them just a little bit. Plus, Scott Dockerman is going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on the national championship game with Ohio State and Notre Dame, but of course, dive deep into the Hawkeyes and talk with him about Mark Gronowski. And did the Hawkeyes get some damaged goods with Gronowski, where we should be in our thought process with Iowa and what they got with Gronowski. And that's where we begin the conversation today in the transfer portal. After going out and building this thing out here over the last couple of weeks, we've seen Iowa be very, maybe slower than a lot of us would have liked and would have hoped for. Definitely understand that part of it and some of the frustration that was there, especially in the initial stages. Now, we also have to remember that there's a lot happening behind the scene. And a lot of these commitments that we see early on in the transfer portal window, we have to understand that, yes, there is going to be a lot that left you looking at and saying, this has already been done. This has already happened. This is something that we already know. And because of that, I think maybe we miss on some of those early ones and we get a little bit frustrated. But that aside, so Mark Gronowski is coming in, and that's good. Injury aside, we talked about that yesterday. Yes, it's frustrating. He's not going to have the opportunity to go through spring practice. Here's the other thing. Shoulder surgery is what it sounds like it is. Yes, he had surgery, right? Okay. He's not going to be able there to go through all the drills. But we're also not talking about a torn ACL. We're not talking about a guy coming off knee surgery. That's not what this is. He's still going to be able to take different kind of reps. He's still going to be able to go through transitions. He's going to be able to push off and do some other components at the quarterback position. He's going to have to catch up quickly. That is the concern, but there needs to be excitement. This is a dude. This is a guy that I think you need to be really excited about what he's going to be and what he has a chance to be for this Iowa team, and a lot of good conversation certainly with him. All right, we continue though, because Iowa better not be done. This cannot be the end game for Iowa football, because you still look at this returning roster. They went out right away and you could see what they're identifying. Need to find a quarterback. Mission accomplished. Not just Mark Gronowski, but also depth in the future with Hank Brown. The Auburn commit coming in. You got some excitement there. I don't think there's any doubt about it. You have to be excited what you have at the cornerback spot right now and also into the future. Then we dig a little bit deeper, and they built up the defensive line, especially at defensive tackle. So you get Aaron Graves coming back for a year. That's great. And Aaron Graves took a step this year. Maybe not as big of a step as we like to see, but still, all Big Ten honors. You saw he is continuing to build himself up. The other component to this, though, is what they did bringing in Hawthorne. Probably not a guy that's going to be a starter from South Dakota State, but he is going to be a player that is part of the rotation. And with him and Pittman and a couple of the other guys at defensive tackle, they're now at a spot where you're confident. You have depth. You're going to be in a spot where you're going to be able to do some positive things up front. They're happy with where they are defensive end. And now, can somebody young come in? Can it be an Epinesa coming in right away? Can Yosei come in right away and compete for not a starting role, but a rotational role? I think that's a realistic expectation for Epinesa. We saw that out of AJ early in his career. And I think Yosei can do the same type of thing. What else? There's two position groups I think that still need some tending to. They went out and got Sam Phillips, a speedster out of Chattanooga. They needed more speed. They got a bunch of big receivers. We'll see if they hit. Maybe they can, but you need some more speed. Seth Anderson has proven one thing, that he can't stay healthy at Iowa. That is it. When he's been out there, he's shown it. That's exciting, but there needs to be more. So you take that a step further and you look at what this is at the wide receiver position. Now you got speed. Seth Anderson, if healthy, and you throw Phillips into the mix. Two spots remain. The first is one where they look to be in really good shape. So we go back to the beginning of the transfer portal window, and Iowa was heavily involved with the Rice offensive tackle on a win that ended up at Ohio State. He is a guy that looked to be plug and play. Put him at left tackle, doesn't matter the system, he's going to be good. You look at the pass rush rate against him was incredibly good, didn't allow pressures, didn't allow many sacks. He was really good. He was going to be plug and play. They swing and miss on that one. And it sucks because it's against Ohio State. We know Iowa is in good shape as it pertains to some of their other brethren in the portal and NIL, but they're not in Ohio State's territory. And when you lose to the Buckeyes and the money that they can spend, that's frustrating. But since then, there hasn't been a ton at offensive tackle. And really, this is going to come down to Trevor Lauck. Is Trevor Lauck ready not to be a rotational piece, not to be a guy that starts off in guard and maybe eventually can kick out? As a redshirt sophomore, is this going to be a guy that can be your, no doubt about it, starter at left tackle? Now, looking at what Iowa has offered, some of the offers that they have in the portal as it pertains to the offensive line, I think they believe it. They had to find a guy that was going to knock them off their feet. And after the Rice transfer, they haven't found that guy. It's a big step. It's a huge step from going and barely playing at all to all of a sudden being that starter at left tackle. And we've seen it go well at times. We've seen it struggle at times. Mason Richmond, who turned himself into a good player and a guy that likely at the next level is a guard, he did it. Lauck, though, has the measurables. He came in at 6'6", 285 pounds. And this was a coveted guy. Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan, amongst those involved and offered him. Michigan State, Iowa were the two places that he visited before he committed to the Hawkeyes back a couple of summers ago and enrolled. Trevor Lauck is a dude. They need to get this one right. And it appears right now that they think they do. This spring practice for Trevor Lauck, though, is going to be incredibly important. Now, we also know left tackles are another one of those positions that are incredibly expensive. And if Iowa goes through spring practice and finds out that Trevor Lauck is not the guy, they back themselves into a little bit of a corner if that is the case. The other position that Iowa football desperately needs more depth is the cornerback spot. And though they returned three guys that started, three guys that played a year ago, we saw the inconsistency that continued. And they've been involved with a couple of guys. A guy a week ago just ended up being committing to Wake Forest. I mean, you got a chance to play for Phil Parker or Wake Forest. Okay. I'm not going to get mad at a kid, but geez, Louise, question some of the decision-making on that one. That aside, though, I was still out there and they understand. And, you know, we go through last year and we talked about it throughout the spring and into the summer as they were still searching for another cornerback. You kind of looked around. Well, you got Jamari Harris coming back. Then you got all these guys that have at least played a little bit. You have to feel they're in good shape, right? Not the case, apparently. Another name that is out there from Montana State, Andrew Podrell, is the latest at the cornerback spot, originally from Kansas, and a cornerback that has a little bit of length to him, a little bit longer frame. We'll see on that front if anything's going to be happening, but he's got a bunch of offers already. Iowa is the best and I believe the only out of the Power 5 options. So that's a new one to keep an eye on from Montana State, Andrew Podrell, the latest at the cornerback position. We come back here, Locked On Hawkeyes. We're going to talk Mark Gronowski with Scott Dockerman. Plus, we got to preview Iowa USC tonight. And the Hawkeyes get a road victory, something that has eluded them to this point. It would be an important one if Iowa can put one in the win column. We'll talk Iowa USC plus the newest quarterback coming up next here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Look, attending the new 12-team college football playoff games, it's just been an incredible experience. You talk to anybody that's been on the games, starting on campus, and then what we've seen here over the last couple of weeks, just absolutely incredible. And there's going to be more and more as this thing builds itself up. Well, Game Time, if you're looking for tickets, they have a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks, found some tickets for a matchup over at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Browsing through the deals, it was an absolute breeze. I found great value in all kinds of seats all around the venue. Up high, down low, they got you covered. And the super deal in particular, that was the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat views when buying in the app. It shows you the total upfront. Don't have to worry about those surprise fees at checkout. Plus, on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Let's get Scott Dockerman in here. He writes for The Athletic, where he covers college football, dips his toe in the Iowa athletics as well. And Doc joins us. Scott, Trent, and Ken, thanks for coming on. How are you, Scott Dockerman?
I'm good. It's cold, but it's all right. How about you guys?
Doing well. The playoff, we're down to 1 week from tonight. They will decide a national champion. Doc, I know that there will come a time that we'll be able to dissect this and, et cetera, whether the playoff, what was right, what was wrong, et cetera, full autopsy. I don't, on the surface, I'm glad that these two teams are where they're at. Obviously, they're not 1, 2, 3, or 4, but I don't think that matters in the schemes of things. I think this is going to be a good football game, Doc.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you talk about the way they got there, they earned their way there. I mean, they had to play 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, we weren't sure that anybody could even make it if you had to play a first-round game, and instead, everybody did. So it really changes kind of the way we look at the playoff in the future. These two teams earned their way there. They won both tough games and decisive games. They played really good opponents. Notre Dame played Indiana, which I hope now finally people start to look at in a little bit different light than what we saw immediately coming after that loss. Georgia beat that SEC champ and then beat a very good Penn State team right there at the end. So Notre Dame earned its way there. Ohio State showed what it was capable of. And the other day, I think Jack Sawyer put together the highlight play of the tournament. So I think it's been fun. I think it's been great for college football, and I think it's really given us added value to the college football season, not taking it away.
If Ohio State completes it, they get it done, they get the victory. We look back at the loss of Michigan, and it's just going to be a blip. It's going to be a side note. It's going to be something. Remember when this happened? Is this leading to a change in college football, how we look at it? A 2-loss national champion. Now, we've had them recently, but not at the same level where those losses the regular season. If that would have ended their season or in the old structure, there would have been no playoff bid. That's how this team always would have been remembered. Are we going to have to reconfigure the way that we just as a whole think of college football, Doc?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, those games still matter. I mean, you had, I talked to Jack Sawyer after the Tennessee game in particular and asked him about how did you guys mentally kind of recalibrate after that loss. He goes, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. And he goes, I don't really want to talk about it because I don't want to make them feel like that they're living rent free in my head, but it just means that much to them, and it always will. And, whether, Iowa State won its bowl game, Iowa didn't come, the second game of the season next year, that game's going to matter. And so are the other games. Now, will they be the high stakes, in and out type of situation? Some of them will be, but not all of them. But I think it makes it healthier because if we were left with the old system, even last year, I mean, how much would people be screaming for Ryan Day to lose his job right now.
Yep.
You know, if they would have went to just the Peach Bowl and won or whatever, or lost, it doesn't matter. That people would be like, this year he's on the hot seat. He's got to beat Michigan or else. Now that talk is just local. It's not really anything of value. So I think it's healthier this way, you know, not to put so much on one game. And I think going forward, it's still going to matter, but it's not going to be the be-all, end-all, which I think is good for everybody.
I'm with you. You know, maybe the craziest thing from Friday's night semifinal, which Ohio State won, and you're absolutely right. Sawyer was unbelievable. How about Jeremiah Smith being held to one catch for 3 yards? How did that happen, Doc? I mean, this guy, you couldn't cover him.
Yeah, well, Texas has a really good defense. They had 21 interceptions this year, had allowed only 8 touchdown passes. They rolled everything to him. They bracketed him. They did everything they could to take him away and try to make everybody else beat him. And frankly, they did a really good job of it. I mean, outside of the Sawyer play, which was defensive, I mean, to hold Ohio State to 3 touchdowns, if you're Texas, you got to feel pretty good about that. And, make everybody else around them beat you, even though they've got some players that are capable of doing that. So he's a phenomenal talent. He's going to scare everybody in the Big Ten for another 2 years because he's only a true freshman. He's one of the few true freshmen to me that I look at. I think, yeah, he could play the next level, no question. That was a great game plan by Texas, but still, when you're playing against a team that good, and it's really hard to get past them, and they just about did. They had Ohio State had a really good first quarter, and then after up until the second half, I mean, they really struggled against Texas's really good defense.
Last question rather on this, and we'll move to Iowa. How do you think Sark's sleeping well when you go back to the way that first and goal from the 1, and then the fact that they weren't able to score, particularly the run around the end that they lost 6 or 7 yards. I mean, it's got to be eating him all off season, right?
Yeah, those plays will kill you as a coach. I mean, for the rest of your life, it'll stick with you to just be like, I can't believe we did that. Probably losing sleep, probably being, just really hard to accept, if nothing else. So, that's what happens in losses. You can, Kirk is brought up 2009 to me before, the decision at Ohio State, which kind of lives with him, that he's like, yeah, if I had to do it differently, I would have done something differently there, and he doesn't say that very often. Nope. He told me that in private. So, that's a situation where, you as a coach, you don't always second guess yourself. Certainly don't do it very often publicly, but there are times when you realize, what, I should have done something different.
Doc, let's speak of those Hawkeyes, coached by Kirk Ferentz, and let's go to Mark Gronowski. So the excitement of Wednesday, here he comes.
What's the return policy? We look at the receipt?
I don't know if it's 30 days, 90 days, what it is. Now he's going under the knife. So fill us in on the details. And on the surface, all right, he's going to be back in June. Not that big of a deal, but so many Hawkeye fans, I mean, they have scar tissue after the 2 years of Cade McNamara. I understand the angst. I don't have it personally, but I definitely understand it, Doc.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a day ending in Y if I had something to complain about, right? I mean, it's perpetual, but in this situation, it's understandable given the circumstances and the history for Iowa fans to be skeptical. It's just going to be natural. I mean, we've seen it with the offense from, hey, things are looking better under Brian Ferentz to Spencer Petras has got things figured out to whatever, Cade McNamara is the savior. It's just until things are actually better in the passing game, it's going to be hard to really buy into. And I understand all that. I do think the situation is different, but you lump them together and then this is what you get. And so, this is a situation where he'll be able to throw in June. I think he'll be able to do some work, in the spring, maybe not throw, but he might be able to take some snaps and get out there and do something like that. Whereas, Cade with his ACL and, you can't really do that because you push off and you might re-injure it. So it's understandable. I know some people think they've been duped or bait and switch. That's laughable because it's not like they were, Kirk didn't tweet out last week, hey, by the way, guys, Mark Gronowski's coming and he's really helping. He didn't ask me for permission or anybody else. So, I think it'll all be okay, but I understand the skepticism.
I do too. And Doc, my take on it is if anything, I think that they probably did more due diligence and were more comfortable with their decision rather, because of the recency with McNamara, that they know that whatever procedure that he's going to have to undergo, that it's not going to prevent him from seeing the field. I think they probably went the extra mile before A, the collective wrote the check, or B, Iowa welcomed him to the program.
Yeah, for sure. You're going to do that because there are ramifications. I mean, there are people who are depending on you, in the building and beyond, that need to know that. And of course, their jobs are at stake and what they do. So, they did their due diligence. They brought him in. They looked him over. It didn't come down to a situation like, oh, yeah, by the way, I think I might need surgery after he signs it. If you don't know that, you're foolish. And in their case, they knew. And I'll give them credit for this because I'd heard about it like on Friday morning. And I was like, okay, how do I look into this? And then you get the release and they admitted it, and they were transparent about it. And I thought that was really smart on their account. I mean, yeah, there's going to be people, I can't believe this is happening again. Well, it's not the same thing. It's not the same person. And Iowa has a different offensive coordinator. So I think you could feel a little bit safer until, he throws an incompletion on Kids Day.
Good. Yeah. Really.
Break out.
Absolutely. Doc, you headed to Atlanta for the game?
I'm not going to Atlanta, but I am writing some football stuff this week, and on some of the worst losses by championship teams in
nice
NCAA history. I mean, a couple of them that pop up. 1977, Notre Dame actually lost to a 5-6 Ole Miss team, then turned around and won the national title. And that was pretty fascinating. And then Ohio State, when they won the first CFP title and lost to 6-6 Virginia Tech. I mean, that was quite the loss. So yeah, I'm doing some of that. I wrote Indiana basketball today. I went to Carver on Saturday night, and they had their game like Iowa did against Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of doing a few different things, and then I'm going to write an Iowa football story this week as well.
Good stuff, Doc. We'll talk to you next Monday. Thanks for jumping on, Scott Dockerman. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yep. You do the same. Scott Dockerman, as we check in on the Big Ten, college football, and Iowa.
Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle and bustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps get back into the routine, taking down that tree, taking down all those decorations that my wife puts out there. Yeah, it is a chore. Whether it's tidying up, clearing out, or you just want your space to look new, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm looking for a new piece of furniture in our basement. Got hooked up, got a couple of new TVs for the basement, got the multi-screen setup, but now need some more furniture for down there. Well, the huge selection that they have fits my style and my budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site is so easy to navigate. I found everything that I needed in no time at all. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's wayfair.com, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Back with you one final time, Locked On Hawkeyes. I'm Trent Condon. Thanks for being with us here today as we take a look at the matchup against USC this evening on the hardwood. A lot of good football talk that will continue. We got you covered there, but now Iowa finds himself up to number 38 in the country at Ken Pom. That is a huge, huge number, certainly for Iowa, making their way up the rankings. Now, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done because you dig a little bit deeper into this Iowa basketball team. You take a look at their resume. Really, the biggest glaring hole in their resume is their 0 for mark in quadrant 1. They're 0 for 4. Now, this would not be a quad 1 victory against USC. It potentially could get there, a true road victory against a team that's right in the fringes of the top 75. If you saw USC on Saturday, they were outstanding in that win against Illinois. They played incredibly well in that one. And yes, there was no Kasparas Jacksionis, the talented Lithuanian for Illinois. He was not there, didn't play because of injury. However, they had a bunch of guys that went off. They shot the ball decently from the outside, 5 of 14 from downtown. They just plugged it inside, and it was Desmond Claude that was the difference of that one. He went off for 31 points in the game. Now, USC will turn it over. This is not a great USC team. This is a very winnable basketball game for Iowa. This is one that you kind of feel like the chances of road victories are going to be few and far between in the Big Ten. This is realistically one of their better opportunities to get a victory away from home. The other one that they're projected to win right now at Ken Pomeroy is the matchup at Rutgers. And if you saw them last night, we know that they're a really talented team. At least two guys are really talented. 2 lottery picks on that squad. The rest of the team not so good. But that's what is else on the resume right now for Iowa to get a victory. When USC has the ball, they're going to slow things down a little bit more. This is not a typical Musselman team, a little bit slower pace that they're going to play. So it's going to be up to Iowa to be able to defend this USC team, keep them off the 3-point line on top of it. They're middle of the pack in 3-point shooting. That's what you see from them offensively as a squad. We'll see. Claude 6'6", he can get to the rim a ton. Doesn't shoot it great from the outside. This team as a whole doesn't shoot it great from the outside. And that's been the change for this Iowa defensive team this year. Defensively, why they've been better is they've been better of guarding the 3-point line. I think that's going to be incredibly difficult here tonight if they're going to get a victory against USC. And if Iowa wins this matchup against the Trojans, I think the conversation changes a little bit. Getting a road victory, then you get UCLA kind of playing with some house money. They have to get a bunch of victories here before we flip the calendar into February when the schedule starts to get much more difficult. 2 games in LA, tonight against USC, Friday night against UCLA, before coming home against Minnesota and Penn State. 2 very winnable games. Chance for Iowa to get hot. Wouldn't be a bad thing to see. Thelwell back out there. We saw what a difference maker he was in the matchup against Indiana. Brock Harding, one of the more, I guess, underrated double-doubles. He goes for 10 and 10 and almost an afterthought in that game. This team's playing with confidence. They're playing with a little bit of swag, and that's a good thing for this Iowa Hoops team. We will be back with you late tonight after it goes final. 9:30 tip-off. It's actually 9:40 the tip-off on FS1 for the matchup against USC. We will have a rapid reaction podcast, though, for you after it goes final, so make sure to check in. We'll see. Maybe even go live with that one, depending on how the schedule goes. I got high school basketball I'll be broadcasting tonight, so might throw a wrench into things. But I will be with you tonight with the rapid reaction podcast, and we will illuminate exactly what we see, and hopefully an Iowa win. This would be a really important one to get them maybe back on the right side of the bubble for a lot of people. I know Lenardi and a couple other bracketologists currently have them in. I think that 0 mark, though, would be the big demerit if we had that point. The good news is Iowa still got a lot of basketball in front of them and a lot of chances to pile up some victories. Hey, thanks for being with us today, and thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We got you covered on the Hawkeye front, talking all things Hawkeyes, but not just that. We also have you covered with the Big Ten across the board. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On Big Ten and the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first when everyone else is overlooking it. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, back with you tonight. Looking forward to it. Let's get a Hawkeye victory. We'll talk to you then. Until then, go Hawks.